In this episode, I'm going to show you how to get this old school film look in After Effects. By adding just a few effects to some adjustment layers and manipulating position values, you can achieve a realistic film look. There are a ton of tips, tricks, and shortcuts along the way, so you definitely don't want to miss this tutorial. Check out the description for links to my brand new School of AE, offering courses, personalized coaching, animation presets, MoGraph project files, and templates. Also check out the links for ways to support this channel. Okay, there's a lot to get through, so let's dive right in. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to create a pre-comp for our footage. So let's go ahead and just click this new composition icon right here. Call this footage. And 1920 by 1080, 30 frames is fine. Maybe we'll make this 20 seconds long and click OK. And I'm just going to drag this up to my pre-comps folder right here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag all of these clips into here and kind of go through them one at a time to make sure they fit our comp. So with this first clip selected, hold down Shift Command Option G, and that will fit to our height. Second clip, Shift Command Option G, and we can just hide these as we go along to make sure they're actually fitting. This typewriter, it looks like it already fits into our comp, so that one's fine. And this last clip here of these hippies dancing, that's fine as well. Okay, so let's turn these back on, and I'm just going to cut maybe every 2.5 seconds. I'm just going to put my playhead at the 2-second 15 frame marker. This first layer selected, Alt right bracket, and that will trim that over. Select the second layer, left bracket to move that clip over. Go down to 5 seconds, and again, Alt right bracket to trim that. Select your third layer, left bracket to move it over. 7, 15, Alt right bracket to trim that, and then this last layer, we're going to select that and left bracket to bring that over. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this at 10 seconds. So I'm going to press N to bring my work handle over for my end work area. Then if you right click in this area right here on your work area bar, choose Trim Comp to Work Area. So now this is wall-to-wall footage and everything is lined up perfectly. Okay, so now let's create our main composition. Command or Control N to create a new composition, and we're just going to say old film look. And 1920 by 1080, and this now is 10 seconds long, so I'm going to change that and select OK. And now let's drag in our footage pre-comp. So now let's start to build our old film look around this comp. Command or Control Y to create a new solid, and we want to make this black. And I'm just going to call this BG for background. Select OK. Okay, so with no layer selected, let's go up to our toolbar and just double click our rectangle tool, and that will bring in a shape layer that's the size of our comp. So if we open this up, we get our rectangle, stroke, and our fill. So we can just get rid of our fill. Let's make this stroke color black. And I'm going to increase our stroke size quite a bit, 165. Okay, and I'm just going to rename this border. Okay, let's go over to our effects and presets, and I'm going to type in roughen for roughen edges, and make sure your layer selected here, and just double click roughen edges. And just make a couple of changes here. We want our border to be 35 and our sharpness to be 0. Before we go any further, let's go back into our footage comp, put a marker at all of these cut points. So make sure none of your layers are selected, put your playhead between the first and second one and select asterisk, or you can go up to layer, markers, add marker. If we double click that marker, I'm just going to type cut. And then again here at our 5-second mark, thereabouts, I'm going to hit my asterisk again on my number pad, double click, cut. Okay, again at 7:15, asterisk to create a marker, double click and cut and select OK. So now let's go back out to our main comp. Now if you right click on our footage pre-comp and go to markers, update markers from source, we will get all of our markers back. So I'm going to close up our border layer and then Command Option Y to create a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to call this layer offset. Okay, and let's go to effects and presets and just type in offset, then double click our offset effect. And so this effect is going to move our footage either vertically or horizontally based on what this shift to center is set to. So we're going to make this flip up and down. So let's go to this cut point right here, shift page up one time to go 10 frames, put a keyframe for shift to center at 965/40, press U to bring up that keyframe, and then shift page down 2 times to go for 20 frames. And now let's just make this Y value minus 1080. Since it's a 1920 by 1080 comp, one full rotation vertically is going to be 1080 pixels. Okay, and if we watch this play back, we can see how it's going to flip up like that. Okay, and now we can actually probably move these keyframes closer together. So at my cut point, I'm going to page up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Bring that in, and then we can just shift page down once, go for 10 frames. So now we are 5 frames before and after our cut point. And I'm going to select those and F9 to make those easy E's. And now let's go down to this next cut point, and we're going to do the same thing. So we need to put a keyframe for where it is currently, which is 960 negative 540. And go forward a little bit, and this time I'm going to subtract 2160. So that's going to be 2 full rotations. 1080 times 2 is 2160. So now it's going to flip twice. So it's going to look like this. Okay, and you can adjust these keyframes to get the speed that you're looking for. Okay, and then let's go down to this last cut point, and again, put a keyframe where it currently is. I'm going to move forward just a little bit, and then let's go back the opposite direction. So we'll say plus 1080. So that's going to move this down. At our cut points, we have this flipping like that. Now let's add in another adjustment layer. So Command Option Y. I'm going to call this one Blur. Go to our effects and presets. I'm going to type in Fast Box for Fast Box Blur. Double click to add that. And I want these blurs to kind of happen in between these sections where it's offset, just to kind of give it more of a retro kind of feel. I'm just going to put a keyframe with our blur radius set to 0. Just press U. Go forward just a couple of frames, and let's increase this to 20. And shift page down once to go forward 10 frames. Set that back to 0. Select all those, and we're going to F9 to make those easy E. So we kind of get this really quick little blur like that. So I'm going to select those, Command C, Command V to copy and paste. Maybe make these look a little bit different. So this time it's a little bit slower. Then let's move to about the 6-second mark, and Command V to paste those. Maybe we'll make this one really fast, so it's just kind of like a little blip. And then I think I'm going to select this set of keyframes here, Command C, Command V. So now we kind of have this blurring, and we have a flip, blurring, and a flip, like that. And if you notice, whenever it flips, there's no motion blur. Even if I put motion blur on this offset layer or our footage layer, we don't get motion blur. And that's because the footage isn't actually moving. So I want to add some motion blur to that. And let's go to our effects and presets and type in force motion. And we'll get the CC force motion blur. Make sure that layer is selected and just double click. And now we have some motion blur as that's flipping. Now this is going to kind of slow down your animation a little bit. So I'm going to disable this force motion blur for now. Okay, so now let's start to affect the way that this footage looks to give it more of a retro feel. So again, Command Option Y to create an adjustment layer, and we're going to call this grain. Let's go over to our effects and presets and type in add grain and just double click that effect. And this actually comes in pretty good as a default. I might change my intensity to 1.5, and if I just kind of push in here, change our viewing mode from preview to final output, and then we can toggle this off and on, and you can kind of see the difference. So if we watch that play back, you can see how it adds that grain in there, kind of give it that old feel kind of look. Okay, now Shift / is going to fit your footage into your viewer window. Command Option Y for another adjustment layer. I'm going to call this color. For our color, we're going to add in 3 things. First, we're going to add in a tritone. Double click that. Then we're going to add in a tint. Double click to add that. And then we're going to add in a curves. Then double click to add that. I'm just going to set both of these to 25%. So it kind of gives us this older kind of feel. And then I'm just going to kind of increase my contrast here and increase my brightness. So now we kind of have this kind of a look. And if you toggle this color off and on, you can see the difference that we have here now. Okay, so now we need to add in a null object. So Shift Command Option Y to add in a new null. I'm going to call this position move. Okay, I'm going to make that 3D. Then I also want to make my footage layer 3D and my border layer 3D. Press P for position, and let's just right click on position, and we want to separate these dimensions, and we're going to add a wiggle expression to each one of these axes here. So option click on the stopwatch for X position, and we're going to type wiggle to 15. Option click on Y position, wiggle 310. And for Z position, we type wiggle 150. So this is going to wiggle slightly differently on all 3 of these axes. Now let's close that layer up, and now let's just attach our border and our footage up to this position move. If we watch that play back, we kind of have this movement like that. So we really kind of get this old school film kind of look. And when it's set on quarter quality, it looks like our footage is kind of creeping through here. But if you put it back to full, you can see that it's actually not. Okay, and actually I want to make my border maybe a little bit thicker to just kind of have it come in a little bit deeper. So maybe we'll set this to like 210. And then I want to add in a little bit of a burn film. So Command Option Y to create one more adjustment layer. And we're going to call this burn film. Go to my effects and presets, type in burn, and you see this CC burn film. So let's just double click that. I'm going to move this over maybe to corner, somewhere like right around here. Increase this up to, we'll say 12. And then let's option click on random seed and just type the word time. We can watch that playback and see we kind of get this movement on our burn film. So now if you press this equal sign here, you can disable the expression. Just see what it looks like without the expression. Watch that playback, you can see there's no movement. So just by adding the word time onto this random seed, we get some movement. Okay, and you can set this as high as you'd like. I like to put mine over in the corner maybe. Okay, let's add one more effect in. So Command Option Y to add in one more adjustment layer. We're going to call this scratches. Select that layer. Let's go over to Effects and Presets and type in Fractal for fractal noise. Double click that. So let's open up our transform settings. We're going to take off uniform scale, set our scale width to maybe 5, and our scale height we'll say to 1000. Decrease our brightness. Let's set our complexity down to 1. Maybe bring this brightness down a little bit more so we see these thin, long strips here. Maybe increase our scale height. And then let's option click on evolution and type in time times, we'll say 250 and see how that looks. Watch that play back. We kind of get these lines that are coming through. Maybe we'll increase that even more. Let's double that and say maybe time times 500. And then let's set our blending mode from normal to screen. Okay, and the way you have these stacked does matter. So let's move our border to the very top so everything comes underneath that. And maybe on these scratches, we want to go a little bit darker. So on my brightness, I want to lower that down just to get fewer scratches. We don't want it to be overwhelming. And you know, actually, I may want to make this border just a little bit thinner. Click on border and let's just change this maybe down to 185 so it's not quite so thick. And if you want to add in get an old film look.